All right, let's get some reaction now from COSATU. Matthew Parks is COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator. He joins us now via Zoom. Mr. Parks, thank you very much for your time. The Finance Minister saying that they're withdrawing the Gazette for now. What are your thoughts? I know that you were not in support of the decision anyway.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So we welcome it. I think we welcome when government responds to COSATU and to society at large's anger and frustration, outcry. That's positive. We want government to respond quickly. We had rejected with contempt the exemption regulations for Eskom for 3 years not to disclose fruitless, irregular, wasteful expenditure. We thought that was just simply insane. We didn't think it would stand a legal challenge. It made no common sense. Eskom and Transnet, who also has a similar exemptions, have been the epicenter of state capture and corruption, as was shown in the Zondo Commission. Society needs to know that government takes the issues of corruption, which often is masqueraded, not always, but often as irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. These companies are funded by the taxpayers. Workers and the taxpayers have a right to know the monies are safe. So we welcome the Minister of Finance's quick response to our position as COSATU. It's a positive step. We are keen, we're available to have a discussion about what makes sense for some of our state-owned companies who do raise issues which may be legitimate in some instances, not in this one though, about how can they be agile enough to operate in the economy. Let's have a sober discussions, but it should not be gazetted through the back door late on a Friday and simply just present as a fait accompli to society, and a society which is exhausted by corruption, by state capture, by mismanagement, by racketeering, by incompetence across our SOEs. So let's have a discussion, but it should not be at the expense of taxpayers or workers or the economy. We don't want to see these regulations exempting government or Eskom and Transnet coming back. Whilst we welcome this decision, which is a correct one, government also needs to simply also withdraw as well the exemptions made for Transnet, also not to disclose for 3 financial years, irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and also losses due to criminality. We should be enhancing our kind of oversight accountability for these institutions. We should not be watering them down. And we'd have seen also that just recently South Africa got a tongue lashing from the international community when they put us on a grey listing watch list because they thought that we're not serious enough when it comes to issues of money laundering, of corruption, of racketeering, etc. So the timing for this was disastrous. Optics was abysmal. And let's have a proper discussion, but we should not be seen to be found wanting on such serious matters.
Well, Mr. Parks, I want to come to 2 points that you've made because National Treasury actually discussed these 2 points when they were trying to justify their decision. On Transnet, firstly, I wonder what you think about their explanation. They're saying that the Transnet one is different because Transnet has not come to National Treasury for a bailout as often as Eskom has, and therefore Transnet doesn't put the fiscus in as much danger as Eskom does. But also on the part of grey listing, they're saying that Eskom being exempted would actually assist in terms of the fact that they're saying that that is why we were put on the grey list, because of the fact that Eskom needed to keep being downgraded by the international world because of their books. What's your response to that? Do you buy it?
No, we don't. And no sober person would buy it. Those are really linguistic gymnastics. They make no sense. They defy the laws of gravity. Transit is a risk to society because our mining, our manufacturing, our agricultural exports and hence workers' jobs depend upon it. And transit has been decimated by serious criminal syndicates, stripping it of its copper cables, of its steel, etc., of criminal syndicates, vandalizing and destroying locomotives and train carriages for transit for PRASA as well. So it makes no sense. They might not come to for a bailout today, but they might come tomorrow. Transit is still bleeding, and it poses a risk to the fiscus and to society. So we can't afford to allow it a carte blanche to take criminality or poor governance seriously. And the fact was they were a key epicenter of state capture as shown by the Zondo Commission just a few years ago, and they're still bleeding. Eskom too, and it makes no sense to say that rating agencies will somehow be so gullible to buy that you don't disclose your financial leakages in this report, you put it in a different report. That's stuff that belongs in a comic strip or cartoon, doesn't belong in a government gazette, let alone PFMA regulations. The PFMA regulations are there to ensure good governance. And right now, everybody knows that Eskom and Transit are not the role models for good governance. They're the poster boys for malfeasance, for delinquency, for playing fast and loose with public fiscus. And the reason why we're in a crisis right now of load shedding is because of that. Modupi and Kusile were meant to have cost 100 billion rand. We were meant to have ensured we didn't have load shedding. They cost 200 billion rand. and we're battling with load shedding, which is seeing workers losing their wages, losing their jobs, bleeding the fiscus. It's estimated that we lost 60 billion rand into tax collection last year alone because of load shedding. It'll be worse this year. So we can't afford to let up on this fight against corruption, state capture. So we welcome the minister's calm and progressive response, but we should not be treating these issues with kid gloves. In fact, we should be even more vigilant and more ruthless on these issues.
Exactly. And I mean, this is the same National Treasury that would give Eskom the bailouts, but not make sure that the money is actually used properly. Treasury has been found wanting in terms of putting the measures in place to make sure that the money that it gives to Eskom is used properly. But lastly, Mr. Parks, I know that there's the issue of the separation of power. Of course, there's governance, and then there's the actual political party. But at the end of the day, the people who are in positions of governing this country are part of the ANC, which is part of the tripartite alliance that COSATU is a part of. How powerful are you as COSATU to advise, those in those powerful positions not to take such decisions that will, for lack of a better term, mess up the public purse?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think, the fact that government could do such a foolhardy decision shows that there are problems in government, in alliance. The fact that we have to throw our toys out of the cart and issue quite harsh statements and have some very frank conversations shows that there are issues. But I think that'll happen in any organization, in any political party, in any alliance, in any country. So that's par for the course. And, democracies, including ours, are noisy, and that's fine. I think we can say that, well, look, COSATU, amongst others, raised our voice very sharply yesterday when we saw this thing unfolding. I think as a testimony to the strength of the alliance, with all of its many, many issues, that despite this bump in the road, the Minister of Finance responded very quickly and positively to our response as COSATU, and not just COSATU, but society at large. So that's a positive thing. The fact that we could have a frank discussion with the Minister of Finance, with the Director General for Treasury, with the leadership of government, the ANC yesterday, and they could get a swift response. That for us is a positive thing. That's what we want to see. That's for us the reconfiguration of alliance, because we want to see an alliance which is responsive when COSATU is unhappy, when society is unhappy. We don't want to see an ANC or an alliance which is blind to public anger, to workers' frustrations, which will seek to pontificate and obfuscate and come with some sort of linguistic gymnastics, instead of just saying, guys, we have messed up. Let's fix it, and we're sorry for it, and let's see how we can address whatever concerns there might be on the table. And that, for us, is a positive thing. And if we can do that, that's the way we're going to rebuild the society and the state and the economy. But equally, we said to government very bluntly yesterday, we can't afford this kind of peer ESA own goals, where we have unforced serious blunders, when we should be focused on dealing with growing the economy, assisting Eskom, giving every support it needs to get us out of the load shedding crisis. The grey listing that you mentioned, we're under watch, is because the rating agencies see that we have the laws in place, but they're not convinced that we always abide by the laws. And this little attempt of creative legalistic nonsense would not do well by the grey listing authorities.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us, Mr. Parks, and I like how you described it. Continuous own goals. That's exactly what Matthew Parks, COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator, has described some of the decisions that have been taken by the ANC, basically on behalf of the tripartite.